At 4:11 p.m., the President of the United States stood in the press cabin aboard Air Force One. With a tight grip on the doorframe to keep himself upright as the plane rocked beneath him, he responded to a reporter's question in the most callous way imaginable. He had just come from Dover Air Force Base, where he stood as flag-draped caskets bearing American service members were carefully, one by one, carried past their families and returned to American soil for the last time. And even after experiencing such a gut-wrenching moment, the president had the audacity to say the war is going unbelievably as good as it can be. While he stood braced in that doorway, a reporter had asked him directly, "Did what you just witnessed make you think differently about going ahead with this war or even putting troops on the ground in the Middle East?" And as he leaned in to answer, his eyes went glassy and distant. His gaze drifted past the press corps. For a moment, it would be easy to imagine he was thinking back to where he had just stood, to the parents who called their children "my boy," to the silence that falls over a tarmac when a nation receives its dead. Instead, Trump didn't pause. He didn't show even an ounce of grief or pain. He said how he really feels. "We're winning the war by a lot," he said. "We've decimated their whole evil empire." And then he said, "We've accomplished more in 1 week than anyone thought possible." Then he started listing numbers. "We've wiped out their Air Force, every plane. We've wiped out their Navy, 44 ships. Wiped out most of their missiles." And then he read off his unverified accomplishments, as if the value of war could be tallied in equipment destroyed rather than in lives lost. But then came the most chilling exchange. A reporter asked if he was worried about coming back to Dover for more dignified transfers. He said, "I hate to do it, but it's part of war, isn't it?" Trump said, and then he stopped. "Who are you with?" His eyebrows went up like he thought he had just caught something. "The Washington Post," the reporter answered, and Trump's face shifted. He looked almost disappointed, as if he had been ready with a sharp reply and decided to let it go. He asked the reporter, "Wouldn't you say it's a part of war?" "Deaths are a part of war, yeah? It's a part of war. It's a sad part of war. It's the bad part of war." He never once mentioned trying to limit casualties. He never talked about protecting American lives. And he never said a single word about bringing our service members home safely. He just accepted death as inevitable. And then a reporter asked about the elementary school in Iran that was bombed on the first day of the war, about those children sitting in classrooms when the building collapsed on top of them. Did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people? The reporter asked. "No, based on my opinion and what I've seen, that was done by Iran," Trump said. And then the reporter turned to Pete Hegseth. "Is that true, Mr. Hegseth? It was Iran that did that?" "We're certainly investigating," Hegseth replied, "but the only side that targets civilians is Iran." And in that moment, Hegseth knew exactly what he was doing with that reply. He could see the writing on the wall, and he took the diplomatic way out with his double talk. That careful, rehearsed non-denial was the answer of a man who knows what really happened and is choosing self-preservation over the truth. "We think it was done by Iran," Trump repeated. "They're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran." But multiple independent investigations tell a very different story. The Washington Post reported that satellite images, expert analysis, and a U.S. official all suggest the explosion was likely caused by an American airstrike. The New York Times, CBC, NPR, and the Associated Press reached similar conclusions. Human rights watchdogs called for the strike to be investigated as a potential war crime. An Al Jazeera investigation found that missiles hit the adjacent military base and the school, but bypassed a medical clinic located between the two. A strike pattern that cannot be explained as coincidence and strongly indicates the school was hit by a direct, separate strike. Trump said it was Iran. The evidence says it was us. And then, just as abruptly as he had started, Trump was done. A reporter was mid-question when he cut them off. "When this ends, we're going to have a much safer world," he said. "This is a minor excursion." And then he turned and walked out of the press cabin, leaving reporters still reaching for follow-ups that would never be answered. But his final remarks said it all. The President of the United States is calling it a minor excursion. A war that has already cost at least 6 American service members and countless innocent civilians. Their lives are just a minor excursion. And that wasn't even the most dangerous thing he said on that flight. When a reporter asked Trump whether Russia was supporting Iran in this war, he brushed it off without hesitation. I have no indications, he said. We don't have any indication of that whatsoever. If they are, they're not doing a very good job because Iran is not doing too well. But try as he might to wave it away, it was another blatant lie, because that very same day, the Washington Post reported that Russia has been providing Iran with targeting intelligence to strike American forces in the Middle East, including locations of U.S. warships and aircraft. 3 officials familiar with the intelligence confirmed the details. One called it a pretty comprehensive effort. CNN, NBC News, and the Associated Press all independently verified the same thing. Since the war began on February 28th, Russia has been sharing satellite imagery and tactical data with Iran. NBC noted that Iran's recent attacks are far more precise than in previous conflicts, and they're using battlefield tactics that mirror Russia's air campaigns in Ukraine, with drone swarms followed by ballistic missile strikes on command and control systems. And what this really means is that Russia is helping Iran kill Americans. And on that same day that reporting became public, the Trump administration announced it would lift sanctions on Russian oil, allowing them to sell more crude on the global market. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on Fox Business that he'd authorized India to begin buying Russian oil again, framing it as a temporary measure to ease supply pressure caused by the war. He issued a 30-day waiver to let India resume purchase of stranded Russian oil. But the people this benefits aren't American families. The people it benefits are in Russia, the same Russia whose president's photograph hangs framed and displayed on the wall of the White House. We can never forget that a photograph of Trump standing with Putin hangs in the people's house because Trump put it there. The man in that photograph, the one Trump defends, protects, and aligns himself with, is helping our enemy target our people. And we are rewarding him for it, easing sanctions so he can make more money while he's still waging war on Ukraine. And when a Fox News reporter, Pete Ducey, asked Trump about it the day before, at an event supposedly meant to save college sports, he snapped at him. He said, "What a stupid question that is to be asking at this time. We're talking about something else." He didn't want to talk about it because the answer ties everything together. But the Air Force One press gaggle wasn't the only performance Trump gave that day. Hours earlier, at 10 a.m. Eastern, he had walked onto the stage at his private golf course, Trump National Doral in Miami, for the Shield of America Summit, where leaders from a dozen conservative allied Latin American nations had gathered to discuss cartel violence, border security, and countering Chinese influence in the hemisphere. What followed was a rambling, low-energy speech in which Trump, standing in front of a dozen Latin American heads of state, casually admitting that he had spent his years out of office planning his return to power. He said, "We had a rigged election, so it gave me 4 years to contemplate and stage my comeback. I staged big comeback." He said it proudly. He repeated the big lie to world leaders as if it were a biographical fun fact. And then he went further. He talked openly about using his political endorsements to meddle in foreign elections, and he seemed genuinely frustrated that he couldn't find a way to profit from it. "I guess it would be illegal," he said. "Could you imagine? They spend millions and millions on a campaign. They're losing, and they beg me for an endorsement. I give it, and they win by 30 points. And I get nothing. If I could sell that, is there a way? Is there a way that I can get paid for that? Marco?" He turned to his Secretary of State and asked, in front of Latin American heads of state, whether there was a legal way for him to monetize his influence over their elections. That's not diplomacy, that's a shakedown. And he offered missiles to the leaders in the room the way you'd offer someone a drink. "We'll use missiles if you want us to use a missile," he said. "They're extremely accurate, right into the living room." That's the end of that cartel person. He told them some of them were actually in danger and that the U.S. would conduct military operations in their countries if they wanted. Just let us know. He lavished praise on Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, saying he went on television to soothe everybody. about rising prices before calling Besant actually a killer. And in this administration, I honestly don't know if he meant that figuratively or literally. And then came the moment that captured the full absurdity of where we are. Trump went on a tangent about watching Victory at Sea, the old documentary about World War II battleships. He talked about how he wanted to bring the big ships back, and how he was told the new ones are 100 times more powerful, and how he's building 10 of them. Not to use them, he said. We don't want to use them. They'll say, oh, he's very militarized. I'm the one that ended 8 wars. But he has not ended 8 wars. That's a lie he repeats so often that he may actually believe it now. And yet, just hours after he said those words, Tehran is burning. Flames are shooting from fuel depots and infrastructure across Iran as U.S. and Israeli strikes continue to pound the country. Entire neighborhoods look like the end of days. He started this war just 1 week before without congressional authorization, and it already destroyed lives. And he stood in that room and called himself a peacemaker. And for those of us who look back to history as a warning for the future, the parallels just keep mounting. In 1935, Benito Mussolini's domestic support was collapsing, the Italian economy was struggling, unemployment was climbing, and his grip on power was slipping, so he invaded Ethiopia, a country that he knew couldn't fight back. He declared it a civilian mission, used the war to silence critics and rally nationalism, and bought himself time. The international community condemned it, but nobody stopped him. Hitler followed the same playbook. His military escalations were often timed to moments of domestic pressure. When dissent grew and the economy faltered, he launched bold military actions designed to make himself look strong enough that no one would question what was falling apart at home. Trump is running the same playbook. His approval is continuing to sink. Prices are climbing, employment numbers are down, the midterms are approaching, and his party can feel the ground shifting beneath them. So he launches a war, threatens our elections, creates global instability, and further divides us back at home. He keeps the chaos spinning fast enough that nobody can focus on any one failure long enough to hold him accountable. Authoritarians don't start wars because they're strong. They start wars because they're losing. And the war becomes the thing that justifies everything else. Emergency powers, delaying elections, and demanding loyalty. The war is the infrastructure. And while that was happening, I spent the better part of the day at the veterinary hospital with my dear cat, and had a lot of time to sit and think about the limited time we all have on this planet, and how devastating it is that we've had to waste so much precious time on a man and his neighbors who value neither truth nor humanity, who increasingly value war over peace. And yet in that moment, I also thought about how most of us do care, and that what we are fighting for isn't limited to better days for just ourselves. It's for the generations that follow. Because this year, we have an opportunity to choose, for ourselves and for those who come next, in an election that will determine whether we continue to evolve as a society towards greater justice, freedom, and dignity for all, or whether we regress and watch hard-won progress slip away to empower the very people who seek to destroy it. My mind went to our ancestors, the ones who crossed oceans with only the clothes on their backs, some by choice and many by force, who sacrificed their own time on earth to build a future they would never get to live in, so that we could have the rights we do. I think about how it wasn't that long ago that women couldn't vote or hold credit in their own name, how Black Americans were denied their personhood, their votes, their lives, and how LGBTQIA people were criminalized, how so many were told they did not belong. None of that changed on its own. It changed because ordinary people made extraordinary choices. They fought, they endured, and they insisted on better. It was still a work in progress, and our country was still a work in progress. So many were still being targeted, but the momentum was there. We were moving forward, imperfectly, unevenly, but forward. And I think about what we're up against now, and how, because of them, we have a real chance. But it's going to take us making our own extraordinary choices and taking our own extraordinary action. And how we do that is up to each of us. We all have our place in the fight, from sharing the truth to supporting the truth tellers, to championing the candidates who will fight for us, to voting, to choosing every day where we spend our money and who we give our attention to. None of that is too small. All of it matters. And I also thought about how every single day, even in the midst of cruelty and chaos, there are glimmers of progress all around us. Like in Virginia, where the state legislature passed a first-of-its-kind bill that prohibits public schools from teaching that January 6th was a peaceful protest. The bill requires that if schools teach about that day, they must describe it as an unprecedented violent attack on the United States democratic institutions. They cannot present claims of widespread election fraud as credible. The bill's sponsor, Delegate Dan Helmer, put it plainly: the White House has tried to rewrite history. I don't want to celebrate traitors in our public schools. That's what he told CBS. Governor Abigail Spanberger is expected to sign it. It will be the first law of its kind in the country, and New York is already considering similar legislation. Hopefully other states will follow to counter the disinformation Trump is still selling from the White House website. Because when you protect the truth for the next generation, you protect everything. And that move is why I still have hope for America. And you should too. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I just want to take a moment and thank you for joining this community. I read all the comments and I respond to as many as I can, but I see them all, and they all mean a lot. This channel had 0 subscribers just 2 months ago, and I'm excited to see how we can grow this channel over the coming months. So please take a moment and subscribe if you haven't already. Please give the post a thumbs up, like it, comment, anything to let the algorithm know to show it to more people. And for all of my daily posts, you can find me on Substack just by searching Heather Delaney Reese, and I've included a link for you below. And remember, no matter how dark the days get, and they're going to get a lot darker as we get closer to the midterms, I will be here every single day, and together we will always have hope for America. I'll see you tomorrow.